is not here. It is 7:05, so we will get the meeting started. Welcome everybody, and just a couple of housekeeping items. There's hand sanitizer everywhere in this room. So and there's wipes as well as water over behind the camera over there. So help yourself. And with that, we'll call the meeting to order. So there's two items on the agenda tonight. The first one I'll read off. Actually, before I do that, I'll do introductions here just quickly. So to my far right, we have Councillor Mike Duffy. To my left here, we have Councillor Yankoff, Councillor Tweel, Councillor McCabe, and Councillor Ramsey, and myself, the Chair of Planning, is Councillor Rivard. So welcome. All right, so the first item on the agenda is the Lot 19-1, the Sherwood Road. There's a request to rezone the subject property from the Comprehensive Development Area CDA zone to the Industrial Business Park M3 zone and amend Appendix A, the official land use map from Comprehensive Development Area to Industrial in order to develop two industrial developments, a heavy truck maintenance shop and a construction company office, both of which have auxiliary warehousing and outside storage. We do have Robert here, one of our planners, to do the presentation, and after we'll open up the floor to any questions. So with that, Robert, take it away.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just some technical difficulties, but we'll sort that out. All right, so I shall resume the presentation or start it. So tonight we have an application on the Sherwood Road. It's a vacant lot presently. The request basically is to change the official plan designation from the comprehensive planning area to the industrial designation, as well as to rezone the property from comprehensive development area, it's a CDA zone, to the business park industrial, the M3 zone. Part of this, the applicant is also proposing a lot consolidation to create a larger lot and then subdivide that said lot for two separate uses. So the subject property here is PID 1107-200. There's a separate property up here, PID 145-961. Basically, the applicants are proposing to do a lot consolidation. So they're going to consolidate the lot itself, and then they're going to split that lot into two lots, each with different industrial uses. So as you can see here on the map, we have the reddish pink area as the M3 zone, and then the striped area is CDA. So portion of the lot, so lot 19-1A, I'll just get to here, which is basically this portion of the property, remains in M3, which is Business Park Industrial Zone. And so the proposed use the applicant wants to construct is to develop a new building. This would be housing offices as well as a maintenance shop, to develop industrial business that will contain an office building, warehousing, and a storage yard. So as you can see here, that will be the office, and then in the back you're going to have a large warehousing building, and then there's going to be some ancillary outside storage of construction materials. Then we have on lot 19-1A, which is this lot here. This is part of the subdivision. This is basically going to be a large truck maintenance shop. So basically that consists of working on large trucks and vehicles, tractor trailers, and then they're going to have a couple lease spaces to accommodate future industrial businesses in this main building here. So one thing I will point out to the members of the public and council is that one of the requirements, and this will be done at time of subdivision, is that the lots will need to be serviced. So presently, there's no water or sewer utilities that run up to the properties, and the screen's blocking here, but the blue line delineates water, and then brown is wastewater or sewer. So the applicant is right now working on technical drawings to service those lots in order to complete the subdivision, as well as then apply for building permits for each of those uses. The applicants are here tonight, so they can answer any specific questions that council or members of the public might have on the proposed uses. Thank you.
Thank you, Robert. Excuse me for being late. The deputy is coming along very shortly. We were at another meeting, neighborhood meeting, so glad to be here. And I know our esteemed chair of planning has carried us through, so I again will leave it with him. I'm sure you introduced everybody. Thank you. So we'll open the floor up for questions, and there's one mic, two mics. Yeah, two mics. So don't hesitate if you have questions or concerns, issues, good points, bad points, we'll take everything.
Hello, good evening. Jamie Brown, I own a property on the Sherwood Road. For those that aren't aware of that, thank you. Just a couple of questions. The M3 zone, the dealerships like the Cat dealership and the dealership across from the Cat, what's that currently zoned?
Robert?
Yes, so that would be currently zoned M3.
That's M3 as well?
Yes.
Okay. And when you mentioned construction materials, what is the definition, or what is the construction materials? What would be allowed?
So the zoning bylaw generally permits construction materials as like any kind of like materials such as lumber, raw processed materials such as like concrete blocks. It's just very particular and broad on materials relating to construction itself. And then part of the requirements is when you have outside storage is that it's located into the rear yard, so away from street itself, again, from a visibility perspective. But that is usually the type of materials that are permitted as outside storage.
Okay. Well, personally, I don't have an issue with the zoning change. You know, you got the Cat dealership and the dealership across the street. Seems like it's going to complement, and that's what the Sherwood Road's all about. Is, you know, trying to complement you know, the businesses that are on the Sherwood Road. So I don't see an issue with the change the zone to allow for this construction, unless somebody can point out something that might be negative. I don't know. I don't see it.
Thank you, Jamie. Appreciate your comments. You've been on that road for how many years? 20? 25? Right on. So, Mr. Forbes, our Manager of Planning and Development.
I don't have a zoning map here, but I just, for clarification, the Cat dealership may be zoned CDA as well as the other, there's a rental place across the street. Those were large properties. They were dealt with a CDA, but I thought I would just clarify that.
So why change it to M3, not CDA? Or is it currently CDA?
What is the current zone, Robert? CDA?
The current zone of the subject property is split zone. So as you can see here on the map, this portion here is M3, which is the business industrial, and then the light opaque with the lines is CDA.
CDA.
So the application is to rezone the entire lot M3.
Okay, so just for clarification, because I don't think we're 100% clear. So the Cat dealership and I forget what the name of the dealership across from the Cat.
HJV.
Right. Those are currently zoned what? Is it CDA or is it?
So the cat dealership, is it this one, I believe, here on the corner? Yeah.
That's
Yeah,
right
so
there.
that would be, yeah, my mistake. So that would be CDA there.
Comprehensive development area.
Comprehensive development area, that's correct. And so basically when the zone was placed into the bylaw, CDA is basically, it requires that if you develop your property, you have to do one of two things. You either rezone the property to a specific zone, so in this case it would be the M3 zone, or you have to come in with the comprehensive plan to show how you're going to service the property, if you're having any internal roads, servicing connections, lot layouts. So if you're planning on doing like multiple subdivisions with lots, then that's when you bring basically a comprehensive plan to show council and the public what you're proposing. Then council would basically, it would be for them to either approve or deny that request, and then building permit stage would be next. And
So you're looking at changing to M3, but why not just comprehensive development like the other dealerships that are currently there?
Yep. So in this case, because we have a split zone situation, discussion with the applicants was that the M3 provides more variety of use, because when you do bring a comprehensive development plan for council approval, they approve that plan. So in the future, say if you did a dealership and it's like that's the plan that it's approved by council, and then you wanted to say add like a commercial plaza, then you would have to basically go back and go through almost the rezoning amendment stage again to get that approval. If you rezone it basically to an M3 zone or an M1 zone or an M2 zone or any type of zone like that, you can generally do any use with like any permitted use within that zone. So in this case, I believe the applicants just wanted to continue on the existing zone of the M3 zone and extend it to the remainder of the property. But they are here to answer that question. If there's
Okay, yeah, maybe a little bit more clarification.
And,
perhaps.
and Jamie, can I just point out as
Just
well, right here,
Councilor Rivard.
is we could also get them to sign a development agreement as well, if need be, saying that this is what they're doing on the property. So a development agreement basically locks them into what they're proposing.
Yeah, because what is permitted on M3 zoning other than
The uses, you mean?
yes, the uses?
Robert, do you know what the
Unfortunately, I don't have my bylaw, but it's a long list of uses that are generally light industrial, for example, commercial uses. Some commercial uses are permitted in there, storage, outside storage, warehousing, distribution center, different light industrial uses such as that. So different from other like heavy M2 heavy industrial uses, which are more industrial in nature and might have more implications from a land use impact perspective. Basically an M3 zone, which is kind of a hybrid of light industrial and more commercial uses. So that's essentially kind of what the M3 zone entails.
So no aggregate would be permitted, correct?
Again, this outside storage, it's pretty vague on like materials that can be used or can be stored on the property itself. So if you had, say, crushed rock piles, again, that would fall within the definition of outside storage. So we're not talking about large quantities, but it would be effectively part of the outside storage component.
Yeah, we do have representatives here that may be able to answer some of those questions. I'm not sure. I don't mean to put you guys in the spot.
Chris
But are
McQuillan.
those questions you guys can answer?
Yeah.
Chris, can you just introduce yourself and who you're
Yeah.
with, please?
Chris McQuillan, Fitzgerald and Snow. So our yard is more or less just our scissor lifts, our tool trailers. We have a large warehouse, so most of our building materials we want to store inside for the longevity of the equipment. It's just like any job, when you're done with a job, like, when we do your job, there's always stuff left over because it's a metal siding. It's meant to be kept clean and tidy, and it's not concrete, it's not asphalt, it's not topsoil, it's not, it's building materials, and we're not to sell. Like, if we have a shipment coming in for a job, we don't need it for 2 weeks, it's in our yard, and we take it to the job site. But a lot of it also is our tool trailers, our job site trailers, just that type of stuff.
Jamie, do you mind going to the microphone and just
You have to
asking
go
a
to the
question that
mic,
was on
Jamie,
record?
because it's all public record. We want to keep you on public record.
What's the name of the business?
It's Fitzgerald Snows. We're moving from Summerside to Shelton.
Okay.
It's a good move. Huh?
That is a good move.
That's a good
They're
move.
a good builder. They build our dealership.
No, I know they are.
And like I said, I don't have an issue with the zoning change, and Fitzgerald and Snow are very good business people, and we just don't want an asphalt or concrete plant in the zone. That's all.
And the president of the company's a good guy too, Vernon McQuillan.
Okay, thank you.
Did you have? Jamie, afterwards, I'll show you the M3 zoning. I have it up here on my Surface. It's easy to access. Any other questions? Do you have any more concerns there, Mr. Chair? The deputy mayor arrived late too. He was at the same meeting, so he's here also. Chris, do you want to add any more to the story, or is that? Let's close it. Councillor Tweel, do you have a question? No. Okay.
Okay, can you hear me now? Great, great. First of all, congratulations on your move to the city of Charlottetown. Just a couple of questions, and maybe, I don't know if you can answer it or Robert can answer it, but in order to facilitate this move, is it truly required that you have to go from CDA to the M3? Can you not accomplish and facilitate the move and have the construction of the required facilities under the CDA zone? Because if I understand it correctly, a CDA zone, you have to enter into a developer's agreement, if I understand that correctly. Can that not be accomplished under the CDA zone? That's the first question, and maybe Robert can answer that.
Yes. So, in response to your question, Councillor Tweel, when we deal with multiple zones on a lot, as per the bylaw, they become boundaries. So when you have split zones and you see that line running through the property here, so it's dividing line between the M3 and the CDA zone, that effectively becomes a lot boundary. So it kind of limits if you want to say construct a building over that line. So for simplicity's sake and to clean up the zone, the applicant's just going to rezone this to M3. It also allows them to some flexibility in the future in case they say want to add a commercial unit in one of the business plazas or the business units in the truck terminal shop, for example. So if they wanted to do another use that's permitted under the M3 zone, they could do so with just a simple building permit. If they wanted to do a use that fell outside of the scope of the development agreement, then they would basically have to make a reapplication that would follow the same process as a zoning amendment. So that means they would have to go to planning board, proceed to public consultation like tonight, and then again proceed back to planning board and council for final approval. So this in essence would just allow flexibility for the developers or the owners, and then also it cleans up that dividing line so that they don't run into any issues when they're constructing their buildings.
Okay, so to move towards the M3 gives the applicant more flexibility.
Correct.
Gives them more flexibility, and he's not running back to planning board, or I'm sorry, planning staff, and then going to a required public meeting for consultation. It's just a clean break, moves to M3, and then he proceeds with his development.
That's correct.
Okay, I do have another question, and maybe you can help me. So, obviously, two buildings, One is to do the professional work that needs to be done, engineering consultation, business meetings, and then the other building is a building for their equipment to do maintenance work and the storage of materials. So is there an hours of operation, or are they under this particular zone, they permitted to work around the clock, 7/24 when it comes to equipment maintenance and of course storage of equipment and materials?
So the zoning bylaw wouldn't regulate like noise. That would be like more of a noise bylaw. So that would be more situated with police, for example. The applicants are here. Maybe they could perhaps answer in regards to their hours of operation when it comes to your specific question on the storage and the manufacturing.
Chris, can you just outline some of your operations?
Yep.
I don't think you're an all-night operation. I know you work hard.
Yeah, so no problem. So just to be clear, the development on the right is strictly Fitzgerald and Snow.
Yeah.
That's our office, our warehouse, our
Yep.
yard. The building on the left is actually just a client that we're doing a building for. It has nothing to do with Fitzgerald and Snow.
Okay.
So the hours of operation for Fitz and Snow, like we work 7 to 5, Monday to Friday. That's it.
Okay. So who's the building next door?
It's a truck service shop for a client that's currently in Stratford. They service trucks, trailers for Midland and whatnot. So if anything, we're next to them. So I believe their hours are 7 to 5 as well. And the application just went in together because of just the land and the purchase of the land. It all came together at the same time.
So is it a trucking depot or?
Not a depot.
No, it's Stratford Truck Service Shop.
Yes.
Yeah. So you guys are moving from Summerside, and
On the right
Stratford
there.
Truck Service is moving from Stratford. So
Two
excellent.
totally separate developments,
Okay. Okay. Well, I appreciate.
but both constructed by Fitz and Snow.
No, I understand that.
Yeah.
Can a representative from the trucking company elaborate on what that exactly entails?
Yes, I'm the representative of the trucking company, as I'll be looking after that construction and hiring Fitz and Snow to do it. My
Yep.
name's Chris Lindsay Odell, and I'm with Creative Acres. That's a truck shop, runs 7 to 5 as well. He has strictly a couple lease spaces to do that. It's light industrial maintenance on the trucks. It's not a depot, it's not a storage yard. It's an in and out, get your oil changed, get your tires done, back on the road. So
Okay. So
other than that, it's pretty cut and dry.
7 to 5.
7 to 5.
You work Saturdays too.
Yeah, I'm sure there's Saturdays to be done
Evening
as well.
grounds go down to your shop. It's a great shop. No, it's a good shop. It is.
I didn't catch that. What was that?
But you know what? I appreciate that, Chris, that you're moving from Summerside. Stratford Trucking Service is moving from Stratford. Good for business. Thank you.
Anything else, Mitch?
No. I was just trying to understand the scope of what your development consists of.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's not going to be a whole range of trucks being stored there. It's just basically a maintenance shop where we get them do the necessary maintenance work, and then they're back on the road.
Yeah, no, it wouldn't be anything. There's no trailers. It's an in and out shop.
Okay, thank you.
Correct.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions? You want to close up there, Mr. Chair?
We're not closing
Oh.
yet.
Yep, another question, sir. Hold on. Let me turn my mic off so you can.
Okay. Just a procedural question. I read here in the report, letters went out within 100 meters. Did any letters come back in terms of support for the development, or is there any letters of opposition? Did we receive any correspondence from the affected neighbors?
Yes, I can answer that. So, Councillor, we received, as of today, we received no correspondence or letters in regards to objection or support for both of these applications. applications.
Thank you, Robert.
Councillor Twill, that's in your report.
Pardon me? Yeah, no, it's in the report, but today there could have been letters come in today, so I just
Okay.
wanted to be as current as we possibly can, Chair Rivard.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Councillor Twill.
All right, we're not leaving yet, Your Worship. So there is something else here. So we have amendments to the zoning and development bylaw. Proposed amendments to the zoning and development bylaw pertaining to decrease the minimum lot size area for garden suite to 0.30 acre. Permit mobile canteens to start operations in April. Creation of a manufactured housing residential MHR zone. Insert dormitory into the institutional zone as permitted use. Insert storage facility into the light M1 zone, heavy M2, business park M3, industrial zones, parking space standards, and adding dormitory and storage facility to Appendix A definitions. So there's a variety of different amendments, and with that, I will turn it over to Robert to go through each. Thanks, Robert.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So the first set of amendments is to decrease the minimum lot area requirement for garden suites. So presently, back in 2018, the garden suite minimum size for lot area was 1 acre, and that was reduced to 0.5 an acre. This only allowed for approximately 380 properties within the city of Charlottetown to construct a garden suite under that lot area requirement. The proposed amendment to reduce it down further to 0.3 of an acre would allow for approximately 1,900 more properties to construct a garden suite, given that they meet, again, the required setbacks and other requirements of the zoning bylaw. So again, when we were doing a jurisdictional scan of a variety of different bylaws across Canada, we saw from staff's perspective, go low as 0.14 of an acre. However, common practice when we were looking at eastern provinces as well as looking at central Canada, like Ontario and Quebec, 0.3 of an acre seemed to be the predominant size for that. So given that it promotes more infill and intensification within unbuilt up areas, that is what we're proposing in this set of amendments. The second set of amendments is to allow for mobile canteens to start operations earlier. So currently, they would only be permitted to start in April, but we're now revised from May to April. So we're basically allowing canteens to open up a bit early.
Robert, just to interrupt you for a second, maybe because there's so many amendments, maybe a good idea to see if anyone from the floor has questions pertaining to each one as you go, just to help with confusion. Does that work, Your Worship? Okay, so we just finished with the garden suites. I was wondering if anyone has a question with regards to the garden suites.
Chris Otway. I just have a question. Are you getting a lot of interest in the garden suites? Is this why this is coming on stream? That there's a lot of interest that you're going back and looking for reconsideration or a variance on the lots? Is this to kind of clean that up for you guys, your end?
So over the last year, we've only had a couple applications actually for garden suites itself. 2 applications of which, yes, they did not meet the 0.5 of an acre size requirement. So one was, I believe, 0.33, the other one was 0.45. So basically when we were doing a scan, it was, again, just to lower that minimum lot size in order to promote more applications for garden suites. So this is effectively to encourage more garden suites within the city.
So if you're only having 2 applications, can council not decide on those 2 applications for a variance, or is it shut them down completely? Because it seems like quite a difference. You're taking 380 properties up to 1,900 properties. could very well change things. If you're only having a couple applications, it could have effects to people's neighborhoods, right? That's the thing. So if you only have a couple applications, when council should be able to decide perhaps in a couple applications whether a blanket statement, how you're changing quite a bit.
Chris, it's a good point, and it did come up last year, but with the housing issue that we've been experiencing since the last several years, this will help to address that matter.
I guess in fairness to that point, you'll have to wait maybe till the numbers come out post-COVID to see where the housing issue may be. You know, maybe you're putting the cart before the horse here.
So, Robert, just one quick question. So, when you did a jurisdictional scan across the, other cities within the country, what was the standard? I mean, for lot size, roughly.
Yeah, for mid-sized cities, which Charlottetown kind of falls under that, it was 0.3 of an acre. Like I said, we've seen even more municipalities like Ottawa, Montreal, even parts of BC, that were a little more aggressive, where they even went to like 0.14, 0.15 of an acre. But knowing full well that, again, we just want to ease into, reducing the minimum lot size area, and looking at the amount of properties that could potentially install or construct a garden suite, this was the number that staff felt comfortable with. One thing I guess I would point out is that a garden suite is basically a self-contained living unit within an accessory structure. And so accessory structures, by their very nature, are limited in size itself. So depending on the size of your property, for example, if you're anything from 0 to about 0.4 of an acre, you're looking at a maximum floor area of 600 square feet. And then that just steadily increases the larger the lot goes on, and it goes to 750, for example, and then 1,200, and that's gross floor area. So, for example, if you were to do a 2-story garden suite with a garage underneath, the floor area would account for not only the garage space on the main floor, but also the second floor. So it would still have to adhere to the accessory structure provisions in regards to size and then setbacks from property lines. And the minimum requirement for setbacks from property lines in the bylaw is 3.9 feet or 1.2 meters.
Yeah, no, I totally understand, but what you're going to change neighborhoods is the point that I'm trying to make here, right? You have existing neighborhoods that are already smaller lots now. You have the large R1L lots, what this would pertain to. Those lots have more space to perhaps build a secondary suite of 600 square feet. I mean, that's a small home. So it changes whenever you only have 2 applications over a year, when council can go out and look at the lots, the planning department can do a thorough investigation on it, and that's just my only point, but thank you.
And another clarification, if I can add to it too, is that garden suites are only permitted on lots that contain a single detached dwelling only. So similar to secondary suites, which is basically a secondary living unit inside the principal dwelling unit, it effectively would limit the amount of properties to only single detached lots, which usually reside on R1L, but sometimes you get situations where they reside in other, like R2 zones, for example.
And Robert, I might have missed this point, but these will be long-term rentals, not short-term, right?
That's correct. So anything
So
in relation
long-term.
to garden suites or secondary suites, Your Worship, you're correct, that have to go to long-term rentals.
And more supply is better for all of us in terms of renting, buying, and so forth. So I think this was discussed last year, and the planning, correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Chair, but this is what the planning department's been working on since last year, correct?
Yep. Any amendments that are coming here are staff recommendations to council. So again, ultimately we vote on it, but this is generated by staff.
Councillor Twill?
Yeah. So, Robert, with the jurisdictional scan that you referred to and the research that you've conducted, what would be the trend in those other municipalities? I mean, Chris has brought up a good point. If there's only been a couple of applications, why would we entertain broad sweeping changes when, you can deal with deal with those two particular applications and any other applications on a case-by-case scenario, as opposed to making those dramatic changes. So what were the numbers in your research that you did in your jurisdictional scan with other municipalities, whether it be in this particular region or across the country?
Yes, so that's a good point. When we were looking at decreasing the minimum lot size, and we were looking across Canada, there's certain parts of Canada, for example, like the West Coast, that have back lanes, and they're more popular, and garden suites are more popular because they front onto the back lane and the main house fronts onto the main street. So you have a lot of situations in that instance where they went down to like 0.1 of an acre. Some other cities like Edmonton are looking more at like 0.3 of an acre. Again, they have a specific program set up to encourage the development of garden suites as well as secondary suites. One of the reasons why staff is looking at doing more of a broad sweeping change is that part of the affordable housing incentive program that council adopted back in 2018 was to re-examine the possibility of promoting secondary and garden suites as alternative housing forms. And I guess I'll just mention is that those are two applications that we received, formal applications for variance. We've had other multiple inquiries, at least I can speak for myself, on people that were looking, or residents that were looking at converting older carriage houses, for example, into garden suites. But because of the minimum lot area at 0.5 an acre, they weren't able to make that work. So again, this is just, again, part of looking at what other Canadian jurisdictions are doing, as well as trying to adhere to the Affordable Housing Incentive Program that Council adopted in 2018.
Okay, Robert, can we go on to the next one? Mobile canteens?
Yes, so mobile canteens, this is just effectively to allow mobile canteens to operate a little earlier. So, for example, Burger Love occurs in the month of April, so we've got many requests. Some of these canteens want to open to participate in this culinary event, and again, when staff sat down and discussed this, we didn't really see an issue with allowing for that to happen. Again, it promotes the culinary event itself and more participation and generating more local business. So that's the rationale behind that amendment. And if there's any questions, I can take them.
Any questions? Manufactured housing, that's mobile homes.
That's correct. So effectively, this is a larger change to the zoning bylaw. Effectively, we would be creating a new zone, which is a manufactured housing residential. It's the MHR zone. So currently, the city does have a manufactured housing zone, an MH zone. This allows for modular and mini homes to be constructed. However, we ran into a situation where there was an applicant that wished to construct a mini home, modular home development. Unfortunately, they wanted to construct this with access to a public street, but the existing zone, which is the manufactured housing zone, only permits for this type of development on private streets. So effectively, the developer would have to construct a private street and service these homes with utilities and services. So staff would be looking at incorporating this new zone to allow for mini or modular homes to exist on public streets, or to be built onto public streets with public infrastructure. Again, since this is a new zone, any property within the city of Charlottetown that would be looking at this form of development would have to go through a rezoning application. So effectively, if there was a particular street that they wanted to construct this type of development on, they would have to apply through a rezone, like a zoning amendment, and therefore, along with subject lot rezonings, any property within 100 meters would be circulated on the application. The intent of the application would be known, and then it would be taken to a public meeting such as tonight. So that is the new zone that's being proposed. The siting requirements would follow the same as a manufactured housing zone, and then the last amendment would just to be insert the MHR zone in the zoning appendix as a permitted zone. So that is the new zone that, that staff is proposing, and again, I can take any questions.
Yeah, I have a question. Robert, not sure if you're aware of the history of modular homes in the city of Charlottetown. And you go back, say, 20, maybe 22 years, there was a tremendous amount of, I don't know so much it was the modular homes at the time. And of course, modular homes have evolved into some beautiful, beautiful homes that are being currently constructed. And you know, it's a nice product, but I think it's important that staff make sure that they understand the history of some of the former municipalities, the zoning changes that were being requested by developers. And if you go back, say, 20, 22 years, there was tremendous opposition at that time. So you want to make sure that you're fully aware of those issues and what the opposition consisted of. So I just wanted to bring that to your table, bring that to the table. And if you're looking to construct, for example, say mobile homes, so that means it could go on any street, or it has to be specifically designated. The entire street would have to be specifically designated for mobile homes, and it would be like a trailer court. Is that what you're talking about here, or did I misrepresent the facts?
No, essentially, it would be able to occur on like any public street. It would require rezoning, and it would be a subject lot rezoning. So if there were, say, an application to construct this type of development on an existing street in an existing neighborhood, the applicant would have to have, again, so much land in order to construct it, but then they would have to go through a zoning amendment process, which means that anyone within 100 meters of the subject area would be circulated on the proposed amendment. They would then be able to come out during the public meeting and then representation on it.
So, Mr. Councilor, I have the chair that just wants to ask something. Could he ask a question?
Yeah, I just wanted to do a follow-up, Mr. Mayor.
Can you ask your question? Go ahead then. Councilor Twill?
Okay, so what you could end up with is a different dynamic in a neighborhood where people have bought in to a particular zoning, and then after making that investment, because the rules of the game were one way, and then all of a sudden the rules would change. Is this in essence a spot zoning, for example? Is that what you referred to could this be considered a spot zoning, and then all of a sudden you get yourself into a dynamic where a neighborhood doesn't have or allow that type of zoning, and then you're introducing this? So would this be considered a spot zoning?
So I guess just a quick clarification, that usually what staff would consider a spot rezoning is that you have one area that's predominantly zoned with a certain zone, let's say R1L, and then there's an application that comes in to break that area, like let's say mid-block of the street, to change it to say like an R2, for example. And historically, staff hasn't been supportive of spot rezonings. What this amendment would allow effectively a developer to do is find like a large tract of, and in this case, it would usually have to be undeveloped land just for the cost to be feasible. So they would have to basically look at purchasing land that's already vacant, doesn't usually have houses on it, although that's still a possibility. And then they would have to go through a site-specific amendment, which I think is kind of what you're referring to as almost a spot zoning. It's that they would have to go and rezone the land that would be proposed for this type of development. And anyone within 100 meters of that subject area would then be notified and would have the ability to write in letters and relay any concerns that might have, and even come out to a public meeting to relay those concerns to council. And then ultimately council then would have the discretion to either approve or reject that application.
Councilor Rivard.
Thank you. Thank you, Your Worship. So, Robert, just to, I guess, maybe offer a definition of modular and mini home. And when I say that, modular homes have changed a lot over the years, and I think I think the stigma that's associated with what Councillor Tweel was alluding to back in the day has certainly changed a lot. I mean, I go by Hamleys, and I believe those what look like homes, the two pieces that I put together, is that also a definition of what a modular home is? And my second part of the question is, from a mini home, could it be considered the same as a tiny home as well? I mean, I know that tiny homes, these small homes, are being constructed a lot around the country. Is that kind of the intent?
So I guess the first point is that yes, also a modular home, usually a modular home is manufactured inside of a plant, and then it's brought onto site, and then it's put together and assembled. A mini home can be usually trucked in, and then that's usually the structure where they put a skirt around the blocks that it sits on piles, for example. The mini home itself would be more related to that type of development. We are not proposing tiny homes in their form of like anything under 500 square feet. Just because of the simple reason that the National Building Code has not accounted for tiny homes yet. So our building inspections, our inspectors would not be comfortable with approving that type of development until such time that it's been tested and proven in another jurisdiction. So really, the modular homes is the like prefab home, and then the mini home again. It's like another prefab home that's brought on site, and then skirts placed around the bottom of it.
So just a follow-up question, and I know that I have Chris Forget here. Maybe he can help me out. But the house that I just sold is considered a bungalow, but it was a two-piece modular home that was brought in two pieces, put together. Looks like a bungalow, but is considered under this definition.
Yes, that's correct. That would be a modular home. Yes.
So it could be basically a large portion of land consisting of a number of bungalows.
Effectively, yes, that is possible.
Okay. Well, thank you.
And just to clarify, the rezoning requires a public consultation, as you said. Letters go to the surrounding residential property owners within 100 meters, 2 weeks notice. So the rezoning is an exhaustive process.
Yeah, and considering that this is a new zone, you're correct, Your Worship, that there's no property in the city of Charlottetown that would be zoned this. There's no application to rezone this at a piece of property at this time. So any development that would utilize this zone would have to go through the public hearing process and follow the same process as the zoning amendment process. That's correct.
Just one more question, just so I understand it. So if we're to bring this zone and introduce it into the zoning development bylaw, just want it clear, is this spot zoning or it's not spot zoning? What is it?
Again, it depends on the type of application itself. So if you had an existing neighborhood that was R1L, theoretically anyone could make an application to change a portion of that block to like an R2 or an MHR zone. Historically, I know that staff has not been supportive of spot rezonings because of some of the reasons you described, Councillor, about land use compatibility and consistency with the housing types in the neighborhood. So that, of course, would be part of our analysis when we prepare a report for any zoning amendment application for something like this. And that would then be presented to council, as well as any public feedback from any of the surrounding residents.
Thanks, Robert.
Robert, just 1 second, I'll just give Councillor Tweel just an example of the spots when we talk about spot zoning. Brackley Point Road, Councillor Tweel, if you remember correctly, it was all R1 zonings, and that the applicant came in to build the 14 townhouses. Do you recall that application that we just seen about 8 months ago? So they want to rezone to an R3 in a predominantly R1 area. That would be considered what they call a spot zoning, as opposed to finding a parcel of land, let's say, up by the airport or something like that. That's not near anything. That wouldn't be considered a spot zone. That's the difference.
Can I ask you another question, Chair Rivard?
Yeah.
Pine Drive, is that a spot zoning?
Well, if you remember correct, there's zones already R3 on one of the properties. So one of the properties on Pine Drive was already zoned R3.
Go ahead.
But the other portion probably could be considered as spot zoning.
Yeah. Just to keep us on the MHR, it's going to be a new zone in the zoning development bylaw. It's about residential, like we're not talking about 3 or 4 manufactured homes going onto one property. It's one, correct?
Yeah, so again, one of the requirements is that if someone were to submit an application for a manufactured housing residential zone, we would be possibly looking at, like, they could be applying for multiple dwelling units, like modular or mini homes. And then, of course, to make that work effectively, you'd be looking, again, to make, the financials work, you would be looking at like a vacant land in order to establish that, and we'd be looking at grouping the zone together. But again, it would depend on the application, depends on the area that the person's looking at developing. All of those things would be taken into account, and staff would prepare a land use analysis based on whatever's presented to council.
Okay. Insertion of dormitory under permitted uses in the institutional zone.
Yes, so when our bylaw last went through a major overhaul amendment in the fall of 2018, the dormitory use was removed from the bylaw. Given that dormitories are prevalent because the city of Charlottetown is home to 2 post-secondary institutions, we just wanted to reestablish the dormitory as a permitted use in an institutional zone, which these post-secondary institutions would be located in, as well as reinsert parking requirements. So 1 space for every 3 beds, or 1 space per unit, whichever is greater. So that specific parking requirement was in the previous zoning bylaw that was deleted. We're adding that back in, again, just for any future development applications that might want to install or construct a dormitory. And same with the definition of dormitory. That was reinserted from how it was once defined in the previous zoning bylaw. And again, I can take any questions in regards to this.
Any questions?
Robert, was it an oversight on our part when we removed the dormitory from the zoning down bylaw? We're just correcting a wrong. Makes sense. We went through a bylaw review just a couple of years ago, as council's aware, and was this just a mistake on our part?
So through to the chair, yes, when we hired the consultant to come in and large sections of the bylaw was removed for simplicity's sake, staff, again, when they started working with the bylaw, it was notified that we do need to have some of these uses defined specifically, especially in zones. So this, as council will probably recall, this isn't the first time where we reinserted a use or a standard that was removed from the last major bylaw amendment back into the existing bylaw. For example, some of the things that council looked at was like lodging and boarding houses, for example, reinsertion some of those regulations that were in the last bylaw. Dormitory would be the same thing.
Thank you there, Mr. Chair. Insertion of storage facility under permitted uses in the MUC mixed use corridor, light industrial M1, heavy industrial M2, business park industrial M3 zones, attachment E, F, G, H. You want to go over those, Robert?
Yes, Your Worship. So effectively, this is a new permitted use. This wasn't in the bylaw previously. This is just something that staff has been encountering with some development application that's been taken into our office. So we've dealt with a couple of applications where applicants were looking at constructing storage units. So basically storage units to store, individual units to store goods in which they rent or lease the space out to tenants. And previously, we were processing those types of applications under the definition warehouse and distribution center. However, when we were looking at some of the industrial classifications, warehouse and distribution center still is very different than individual storage units or a group of storage units. So to provide more clarification in the bylaw, we have proposed to insert storage facility as a permitted use in the zones that would also permit a warehouse and distribution center. We've also looked at some of the parking requirements, reducing some of the parking requirements for storage units, because usually tenants just drop by the site, deposit their items, and then they leave the site. They're not there for an excessive amount of time. So again, we were trying to limit some of the parking demand because there's higher parking calculations for warehouse and distribution centers. So we were trying to scale that back for this type of use because again, it's very transient, the traffic that's flowing through those types of uses. And then the definition, we basically assembled this definition from looking at other sources such as Halifax and I believe Moncton. And I can take any questions on that.
Councillor Rivard?
Thanks, Robert. So just to be clear, I mean, I recognize many of those zones, the M1 zone, the M2 zone, M3 zones, those are all really the two business or industrial parks, West Royalty and Officer Wood Road, correct?
That's correct.
The MUC, I'm just refresh my memory. Is that really kind of predominantly in the same area, or is the MUC kind of mixed in other parts of the city?
Yeah, you see MUC mixed in other areas. So, for example, like St. Peter's Road would have a large swath of MUC located in it, and there's some light type of, I wouldn't say industrial uses, but like commercial storage facilities. So it kind of also matched up with existing storage facilities that are located in the city as of right now. So, but we were just following suit in kind of allowing for a storage facility wherever a warehouse was permitted, since they're similar in use, but again, a bit different.
Okay, so Robert, I think you've covered the parking space standards, right?
That's correct, yes.
Yep, and you've covered Appendix A definitions for dormitory. Do you want to, does that need any clarification? That's good.
Yep. For dormitory, we just reinserted kind of how it was defined in the last bylaw.
Appendix G, zoning map, same thing?
The zoning map, that was just to add the zone classification for the new zone, manufactured housing residential, the MHR zone.
That's it, Mr. Chair. Did you want anything else?
Now, unless there's some questions from the floor.
Any questions? Questions from the planning board members?
Nothing else here.
So we need a motion to adjourn.
Right here.
Moved by Councillor Ramsey, second by Councillor Rivard. All those in favor? Thank you very much. Have a great evening. And happy Canada Day, Unfit Canada.